Okay, everybody, welcome to the Hurdy Burke Internet Broadcast Network, and we are broadcasting live tonight from the state-of-the-art studios right here in Round Rock, Texas. And before we get started with Sadani tonight, first thing we're going to do is make sure all our boards are working right, and they are working correctly. Thank you. I want to thank Rich Ellis and the Brave Souls, RichEllisandtheBraveSouls.com for the music Little Stevie. Little Stevie, as you know, brands all 41 shows. This song was a tribute to Stevie Ray Vaughan. It was written and produced by Rich Ellis. It was recorded and down in good old Dripping Springs, Texas. And that's down your stomping ground.
Sure is.
Right, Sadani? Okay, so we also want to thank NationalWorkFromHome.com. NationalWorkFromHome.com is our sponsor of our show. Joyce was cool enough to sponsor all 41 shows. She has a website, NationalWorkFromHome.com. And if you're interested in starting a home business, she goes over 20 things you need to know before you even begin to sign a dotted line with a direct business or MLM. It's really cool. They go through all these cool compensation plans. But on her website's a script, but there's an 8-minute video, but there's also a video I've shot of her that introduces her. So if you want to go meet her and say hi to her, there she is right there for YouTube video on her site and the other 8-minute video. But there's a script. Go fill it out. She'll meet with you one-on-one or invite you down to Mangia's Pizza. And we want to thank Joyce again from NationalWorkFromHome.com for her sponsorship. Whew. I go through this every week. I have to clear those decks. So we're sitting here with Sadani. First of all, I have to ask you, how'd you get your name? I know what the real name is, but I want to know where Sadani came from.
Sadani came from a teacher I've had for a very long time, probably knows me better than anyone else.
Right. Now, does it mean anything? Does it have
does.
a meaning behind it?
It does. It means the masculine and feminine aspects of waters. So if you consider how powerful water can be and how gentle water can be, it's an equal balanced combination of those two energies.
That's a good point. Well, I always like to ask about people's names, and you looked at me and said, "What the heck is a hurdy?" So we're even in that respect. Listen, guys.
Okay, what does it mean?
I don't know. We don't know. We don't have a clue. I will tell you what I do know. How's that? You want to hear it?
Yes.
Nobody's ever heard this before, and it might be just a shot in the dark. But apparently, I don't know if I should say this. Somebody told me, I haven't been able to verify it, but apparently off some coast in some foreign country, there was this fish called hurdies, and they brought good luck. But they went extinct.
Uh-oh.
Because they were overfished. And this was back in long time ago. So apparently there is no hurdy fish. Now, anybody hearing this, my friends, you just ignore this part. I'm going to get rid of it. But apparently it meant good luck. If they caught, that's how, so I don't know. But that's all I know. It could have been Hurd, a last name converted to a first name.
Got it.
Which is what they probably think it was. A last name Hurd with an IE added to it. Looks like a proper name. So that's probably what happened. All right, guys. So I tried to write it up as best I could on the internet. So before we get started, Sadani, let's go ahead and get your website out to those folks. Just let everybody know what it is. And we'll repeat that throughout the show tonight so people listening and on the archive will be able to remember what it is too. So what is your website again?
It's www.sadaniyoga.com. That's Sadani, SADANIYOGA.com.
Right. And you know, we've got a lot to talk about tonight, but we're going to focus mainly on yoga therapy. And you're going to try to educate yours truly, like we're sitting at a kitchen table, that knows absolutely nothing about it. Well, I do know hippie chick sitting over here does her yoga, but so tonight we're just going to act like we're sitting at a kitchen table and you're introducing me to yoga therapy. And you're going to try to help us explain the differences. And my crack staff producer over here is going to try to bring us these questions written out that I can't get to on the computer right now. And that's a hint that I'm going to need those, just so our listeners are out there in the audience. So before we get into the guts of what you do, let's kind of talk about, because I'm sure we always try to tell our listeners a little bit about your background, where you came from, how you got to where you're at with this today. So you can back up as far as you like, or bring it forward as much as you like. So how did you get started in the discipline? Is it a discipline? Did I say the right word?
That's good, and we call it practice as well.
Okay, practice as well. So how did all this start for you?
Well, it started back, actually, I spent 9 years as a massage therapist. And what I noticed in that period of time is that there was a certain level of dependency that my clients were developing. And what I started noticing within me is that I wanted to empower people.
Right.
I wanted to teach them something that they could take home with them and self-empower and use this tool at home on their own so that they had control of their own wellness, so they could actually direct their own sense of change in their body, mind, heart, spirit in terms of health.
Right, as opposed to being dependent on what you were doing as a physical or as a massage therapist.
Right, instead of coming and getting on the table. I love massage therapy. It's a great adjunct to what I do now.
Right.
But for me personally, I wanted to teach something that was self-empowering, and that's what yoga therapy does.
So if somebody had a back ailment and just needed to go through some positions that would relieve that over a period of time, they could control that part of their health destiny, as opposed to just saying, let's go get a rub every week or an adjustment.
Yes.
And
yes.
So you're giving them control.
Yes, they can catch it right in the initial stages and maybe circumvent something that could grow to more acute experience. Alongside with that, at that point, I decided to open a yoga studio. I went and got trained as a beginner level, entry level yoga teacher. And as I started teaching into my maybe second year, year and a half, second year, I realized that so many people were coming into my classes with conditions that I didn't really know how to take care of. I didn't,
or were allowed to take care of.
I wasn't allowed to,
and
and I didn't know what to do. I wanted to keep them safe, but I didn't know how. So my intention through my training, years in training, were always directed at becoming a certified yoga therapist for that reason. That I recognized very early on that was needed, and there was a problem in the inherent drop-in group class.
Wow. So the yoga therapy thing we're going to be talking about is as you accrued knowledge and experience by going through your training, your classes, and became an expert in this field. This is where you're at today because you started seeing these issues and wanted to come up with a way to talk about yoga therapy. And so when you go to a yoga class and somebody says, "Oh, we're here to do yoga," that's not yoga therapy. Is that correct?
It is not yoga therapy.
So I did good on that.
You learned so fast.
Gosh, I'm just such a good host. What can I tell you?
Thank you.
But no, you're welcome. So somebody just signs up for their basic yoga class, right? That is not yoga therapy. So we're going to talk about yoga therapy in the second segment, but let's talk about, before we get to that, some of your credentials, some of the things that you have. You sent me a list last night. It took about a page, or half a page on my Google Gmail, just so everybody knows, of all the different degrees and stages that you've been through in your training. Would you mind letting our guest listeners know a few of those that aren't listening to the Democratic National Convention tonight?
I'm so grateful for those individuals. Okay, so...
and people that influenced you, if you don't mind, along the way.
Yeah, so my massage therapy training actually highly influenced my work to start with in terms of anatomy, knowing the body, being comfortable with working with people on that level. I was also a doula, which is professional emotional labor support for birthing couples. So massage therapy worked into that. I started becoming interested in yoga and how yoga could
into all that.
Integrate into all that. And I did get to a point where I wanted to move strictly into yoga. So I went to Kripalu Center for Yoga and Health in Massachusetts. It's one of the largest retreat centers known for yoga and yoga teaching in the world.
Wow.
And got my initial training there and other advanced training there as well. Went back home, opened a yoga studio, taught for a while, a few years, and as I started noticing people were coming in with these conditions that I was referencing earlier, I started looking for a very specific line or approach to yoga that was adaptive, that really had a therapeutic intention.
Right.
And that was Vini Yoga, V-I-N-I
Which you mentioned,
yoga.
Which you mentioned in one of your emails, and I actually went and looked at the site last night. Very impressive. It is a different discipline, and for people that are injured, I suppose, or need real therapy. So what is involved in that? When you went through that, what did you discover?
Well, first off, it's extensive training. I've got over 1,000 hours in training with the American Yoga Institute.
Unbelievable.
Gary Krafsow is the leader
and
of that.
He's got some big, nice books out, correct? I mean,
he's pretty
well known in his field, correct?
International. He's at the head of the yoga therapy.
Well, no, so.
Yes.
No,
he's at the yoga therapy movement, and he's been responsible for leading some big studies. One most recently with the Aetna Insurance Company on
really. So
how
the Aetna Insurance Company and corporations that are in these big corporations
in
health and benefits. Or?
Yes, the head of Aetna had his whole staff practicing yoga and doing yoga therapy. As a company, they were doing it. They also, I believe now, are paying for it. But they spearheaded the research that was done with Gary on reducing stress, yoga therapy, and the relationship of stress and anxiety.
Much to talk about tonight.
Specific to anxiety.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So wow. So that's just a couple of them. You still have more training you went through,
yes,
right?
So that's Kripalu Center for Yoga and Health.
We have 1 minute to finish this segment. So could you kind of get through your page of stuff real quick with me?
Vinny Yoga Institute. All the way to certified yoga therapist. I took Kundalini teacher training as well.
These are words I can't pronounce. That's why I'm asking her to say them. Just letting everybody know.
So what it is, I mean, I don't even have to go into all of those things. It's
it's okay.
Just to say that I have an in-depth and a very broad training in yoga.
And that's the point I wanted to make.
Deep and broad.
And the reason I was asking you is because when we do get into the yoga therapy portion of this, the people that are listening know that you've been through all the different things that are required to understand exactly how it works, and you know how to deal with people walking in and say, hey, my knee pops all the time, or my back hurts all the time, or I've got shoulder pain and it runs down my arm and I can't get rid of it. And so you understand what these things are and what positions and things they need to do to start correcting those and overcome those, correct?
I do.
All right. So, Sadani, believe it or not, I told you this is going to go very fast, didn't I?
Yes.
Did you know we're into our first break already?
Oh, my gosh, I can't believe it.
And when we come back, we are going to come back in a few minutes. We're going to start the song Little Stevie, and you're listening to the Hurdy Burke Internet Broadcast Network. Welcome back to the Hurdy Burke Internet Broadcast Network. That's right. We're sitting here with Sadani, SadaniYoga.com, and that's SADANI yoga.com. One word. And so, Sadani, we're back. And you want to say it one more time, too, just so they get it?
www.sadaniyoga.com.
That's awesome. And hey, we are discussing yoga therapy tonight, and that's the reason you're drilling the website home, Sadani Yoga, right? .com, because you want people, you want the people to understand that there's a difference between yoga and yoga therapy. That a lot of people probably in this listening audience tonight that are listening when you think of yoga, they think of a class, you bring a mat, you sit down and you start stretching, right? But you're in a very specialized field of the yoga therapy, which on a percentage, I'm curious about this before I let you jump into this. What sort of percentage of people are into the yoga therapy, say, on an overall that are into yoga, that are teachers or trainers?
You mean teachers
that
are doing yoga therapy?
Or are you in a very, very niche field?
It's an up-and-coming profession. There are actually schools now. Gary Krafsow has worked with Mount Madonna Institute in California, and they now have a master's degree in yoga therapy. There are other schools that are now set up and accredited schools for yoga therapy. Not all schools are accredited to this degree. There's also the International Yoga Therapist Association. You can go on their website and look up a yoga therapist around the world. If they're registered with the Therapy Association, Yoga Therapy Association, their name will be listed, their contact information will be there.
Okay, so what is yoga therapy?
What is yoga therapy? First off, it's 101. First off, it's not new. It's new to the West, but yoga therapy comes out of the East approach, where yoga was always taught one-on-one with the individual, the teacher, and the student, and it was always specific to the person. Who are they? What's their life like? What are their habits? What's their work situation? How did they grow up? What's their lineage? Do they have a spiritual practice? What's their diet like? all these things come into play when you consider yoga therapy. It's the person, not so much like a laser pointed specific, oh, you've got a backache, so that's all we're going to do. That's all we're going to address. It's
well, that
not
could
like
be
that.
Connected to other things that are causing
Well,
that.
it absolutely is.
So there we go.
It absolutely
I just answered.
is.
I got that answered really
Yes,
quickly,
you do.
didn't I? And what was that website again?
SadaniYoga.com.
Okay. Well, you asked me to keep saying that, so we will. Okay. So anyhow, we're having fun. Okay. So is yoga therapy a one-on-one teaching situation, or could it be a class? You see a lot of yoga classes, but is yoga therapy, since you mentioned one-on-one, is that how it's generally done? So you work exclusively with somebody's specific need?
It's possible to have a small group of students,
right.
maybe 5, 6, 7 students that have the similar or maybe even the same kind of situation.
Right.
Like, for example, if you have students that are challenged with fibromyalgia or osteoporosis, then you can work in a group because they have a commonality on the issue at hand. They'll be, if the teacher or the yoga therapist is really really on with the students,
right.
they're going to also meet with them one-on-one. This is what I do with my personal studio, the Sadani Yoga.
Right, and that would be SadaniYoga.com.
Yes.
Right, okay, right.
Is that it's not a drop-in studio. It is a personalized, I call it a boutique-style yoga studio because it's small, it's comfortable, it's quaint, it's homey, it's nested in South Austin on a little quiet cove. It's not on the water, it's on a cove though.
Right, but you've got all the aspects of where somebody could come in and feel really comfortable and homey, and it's just not a room where an exercise room like you see at a gym.
Well,
so
it's personalized. It's personalized.
Right.
So
Gotcha.
if you were going to come to a class or to a private session at my studio, you would have an interview with me. We would sit down and talk about what your intentions were, what your goals were. We would set a plan, and then we would develop a personalized practice for you to take home with you and actually practice on a daily basis. It might be something like 15 or 20 minutes.
But it's taking that control you said people needed to go back and do the exercise to start fulfilling and getting themselves corrected.
That's
right?
correct. And so the program that we designed together is different for each person.
Wow.
So, there's something called sun salutation that everybody knows in the yoga world, and that could be like, some people think that's the end-all fix-all to yoga practice. And I very rarely, if ever, have used that in terms of an individual's therapy practice, because most of what we do in the therapy is internal inquiry and exploration and experimentation, so that the person starts to get to know themselves a little bit better, embodies the body more, starts to kind of feel the root source of many of their places or complaints or stressors, and things start to change when that happens.
And so you meet with these people one-on-one, you go through your inquiry. I'm not going to say a questioning session because we don't want to sound like you're just drilling them for an interview, but I'm sure it's very extensive. Let's just say that.
I need to interrupt you right there, because it's not what I mean when I say inquiry. Inquiry is the person's doing the questioning. My function is I'm always director. It's like, Herdy, take your attention in.
You're doing what Herdy's doing.
Take your attention in. Go in and notice what you feel here or here.
Right.
And stay with that enough that you feel the effect the breath has on that sensation you're feeling.
Got you.
Like that.
So that's how that works. I like that. Since she's proud of, she just got me. And what was that website again?
SadaniYoga.com.
And how's that spelled?
SADANI.
And then yoga, one word.
Yoga, YOGA.
There you go. See, it's perfect. All right. So typical yoga therapy session. What's it like?
Well, I was going to slip back to where you started with saying
Scratch
somebody's...
that question. Let's go back.
No. It's relevant to that, but somebody says, oh, you have to go do yoga, Herdy, so you're going to trot down to the local yoga studio and go in a class and take yoga, and you may or may not have a positive, experience with that. But maybe you get into, you come out and maybe your knee hurts or your back hurts or something.
Both.
You don't know why.
Or both.
You don't know why.
Right.
So you call me.
Ah, okay. So this is
the
next step. All
and
right.
one of the things I can do for someone who wants to participate in a group drop-in yoga class is I can teach them how to do it safely. I can help them understand the specifics about their own personal structure, what things to avoid, how to adapt, so that when they go into a group situation, they know how to take care of themselves.
Wow. So that's
so
even
that's just
better.
one application.
Right. Okay. So one of the other questions the crack staff came up with, and we're all here, right?
Yes.
The crack staff
is
sitting right across from me. You talk about diseases, and one of the things we talked about on the couch before the show started was, and you were very animate about, is that a lot of people think that because they get sick today, that they can't reverse the process or calm that down. Is that correct? And how does the yoga therapy tie into that, or can it help that?
It inherently does, because of it's involving the mind, teaching the person how to focus their mind, get to know the thoughts that are creating the stress, which makes the condition they're challenged with worse. We all know that stress depresses your immune system.
Yes, I can imagine so.
And so the person taking time under guidance, specific guidance, one-on-one, can get to know themselves and their patterns of thought.
And their triggers is stuff that trigger their stress or whatever that may be, from addictions to just triggers to emotions and everything else.
Not even just addictions. People that are living with people who are suffering from addiction that are involved in codependency, for example.
Right.
This is so important.
Because it's always up here.
Oh, yes.
And how do you, how do the folks that come to you for that therapy, how do you, through the inquiry process, nail down or get a pretty good inkling of what's going on with them? And do you share that with them, or you let them discover it and you just work them through it? Is that a good question?
It's an excellent question.
And that wasn't even on the sheet of paper. That was my own thought.
It's an excellent question. Most of the time, my observations are going to be reserved, and I try to direct a person's attention so that they self-discover what I can see. It's more valuable if you have rocks in your pockets, for example, pockets of marbles or rocks, and you just think that's the way it is. You're walking around with your rocks. Normal. It's normal for you.
That's right.
But it's heavy. It's weighing you down, but you think it's normal. And if I go, Herdy, you've got rocks in your pockets, take them out. And you're like, no rocks in my pockets. I'm fine. It's not useful until you put your hands in your pockets.
And you discover
and notice the rocks and pull them out and go, well, no wonder I'm so weighed down.
Right.
I can take all of this out myself, and now I can move easier.
So when do you, because you know what, that makes total sense, and that goes back to the core things of what's normal for some people, it's not normal for others, and it's always easier for an outside person to see things, even on our own selves, than ways we see, because we don't see them as being abnormal, so to speak, right? And I'm not saying that's bad. So, but you know where I'm going with that.
I do.
So how do you, what happens what have you seen in some of your clients? Let's say somebody comes to you for yoga therapy. They're ailing. Let's just say it's physical at this point. And there's some probably emotional because they're in pain, right? It's some injury. It's something that you do work with within that realm. Generally, what is the time frame? You want them to always be now putting this as part of their life, right? It becomes part of their lifestyle. I'm sure that's the first goal. And do you go short sessions, long sessions? How do you build into keeping them in the game?
Yes, I realize I didn't describe the session at all.
Well, so that's fine. That's what I'm asking. Well, it's easy to get sidetracked because we've got a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. That's fine.
The typical yoga therapy session, first I would send out a health history, and I would get that back from the person so that I could get an overview of what they are aware of that they're working with.
Okay.
And then they come in, and we have an introductory session, about an hour and 15 minutes, sometimes a little bit longer, where we talk a little bit about the information that's on the form, and then I take them through some initial movements to just kind of see what's really true from my point of view. What's really true. I watch their breath. I watch how their spine moves. I watch how integrated their movement is or disintegrated their movement is in terms of the spinal curves and
how it
and their
moves
joints
and
and
adjusts
such.
and what they do with their
I
neck
see their
when they're doing this
mood.
all the time.
I can see the color of their face. I can
Right.
watch their emotional expressions when they talk about things.
Right.
Like you mentioned, oh, you got really animated about that part when you said this. The people that I work with do that too. They can get very sullen, or they can get very animated depending on what emotions coming through. So
would you say
it's a
that
piece of
over
that.
your period of time being a yoga in yoga therapy that you've become a very good, can you look at somebody pretty quickly and get a good feel for what's going on? Because that just scares the hell out of me. In a nice way.
My observational skills are keen.
I bet they are. Dadgummit, man! You keep bringing people in here, man. It size me up like a board, but it's all good.
But
No.
you know, that comes from meditation
Yeah,
as
it
well.
does. I get that, and that's part of what I was leading to. Even though I was kidding about that, is that I think that would be one of the most important aspects of the therapy is that you are keenly aware through experience, through repetition, learning, discovery, whatever those things are. Getting to know the person you're dealing with in either the individual one-on-one or small group, right? That you look at their history, you start watching how they act, you start watching their emotions, and certain things happen, and so yeah, that's pretty cool.
So a person gets direct feedback. When it's one-on-one,
Right.
you've got my attention completely, my attention for your support, for your wellness for this period of time. That's really powerful.
I bet you're a great listener.
I'm a very good listener.
That's good. You know what? We're at a break.
Ah,
But let's say that website one more time.
SadaniYoga.com.
Okay, we're going to be right back, guys. We're going to start our song, then we're going to come back with some more questions and even dive a little bit more into this.
I've
You're
never
listening to the
talked
Hurdyburg
so much
Internet
about
Broadcast Network, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Hurdyburg Internet Broadcast Network. We are having a really good time tonight talking to Sadani. And Sadani, what's that website again?
SadaniYoga.com.
And we're talking about yoga therapy, and we got into a pretty intense discussion about that, but we were just sitting there out of the break talking about some of our injuries. And maybe that's a good time for you to throw a couple at us at how this helped you, because you've also had to overcome some injuries. You want to talk
I
about those
have.
a little bit?
I've had weakened ankles all my life. I've spent time on crutches and casts trying to strengthen or take care of sprained ankles. And when I got into yoga therapy, that was the answer. It taught me how to strengthen specifically the things that I needed to. I also had degenerative disc disease where I had a considerable amount of back pain, and I have no back pain anymore at all. I always had neck pain.
And
I have
you can
no
stretch
neck
probably
pain.
unbelievably well, right?
My body is stronger and more flexible
Than
and
it's ever
more
been.
balanced than ever.
You know, you've probably got a lot of people going, I'm going to call her. So that website is SadaniYoga.com. Y'all.
By the way, yes, it is. And I want to add
Uh-huh.
that I'm a mother of 4 children. I have 5 grandchildren, and my oldest grandson's going to have a baby. So that kind of tells you.
And she looks bright and glowy and has a very nice look to her. So I'm telling you, it just proves that if you do the right things, you can have a nice, looks can be deceiving, right? We know that from a medical standpoint. But it is also a little bit of a barometer of how one looks, right?
Yes.
A little bit?
We're about figuring out how to maintain and sustain what we've got on all levels, right?
Gotcha.
Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
And sustaining that with the practice that we do daily at home on our own that's specific to our own needs.
Right.
Specific to our own needs. And it doesn't take an hour and 15 minutes to do that at home. 15 or 20 minutes at home applied daily is like flossing your spine. You brush your teeth, don't you?
Yeah, so you should do something with your spine.
You should
and
do something
everything
with your
else
spine and your
stretch it
joints.
And
Yes.
Okay, so let me ask you this. And it's not on this question, but I'm asking this personally.
Okay.
So yoga therapy, where does the getting your people that you work with one-on-one to get them to learn how to separate themselves from the day and get into not only does the meditation come as part of the practice during it, or is it something they do both before, after, or is it all 3 of those?
The answer is yes to all
Okay,
3.
that's what I thought.
The answer is yes to all three.
I was just making sure. And
yes.
that really is what then would probably start calming down our systems, is when our mind is able to quit focusing on everything that's going on. We get the rocks out of our pocket, so to speak, and those kind of things, right?
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, and because this is another question that came up. Does a person have to be fit, flexible, or to start going through yoga therapy?
There are no requirements, and there's no one that can't benefit from yoga therapy. That's kind of a really negative. It's everyone can benefit. I'm thinking of a woman that I worked with.
Okay, you're never too old to start. How about that one?
You're never too old to start, and you're never too anything. I worked with a woman who was in a wheelchair with cerebral palsy. She had always had cerebral palsy. And I got called in to work with her. She was in California at the time. And one of our sessions, and we did the work in her bed, in her bedroom, and my job was actually to move her attention through her body, which moves energy through the system as well. She couldn't move her physical body like most of us can. One day, she told me, she said, you know, you're asking me to pay attention to a body that's never been my friend. And I really kind of like hit me square between the eyes. I'm like, yes, that's what I'm asking you to do, but let's stay with it. And we stayed with it. And one day, she flashed her eyes open. She had crystal clear blue eyes, and she said, I feel something. I feel something that's not pain.
Wow.
And she was thrilled.
Wow, because that's never a feeling she had.
She only knew pain in her body.
And she didn't see her body as being anything but not a friend. She just was stuck in it, correct?
She was imprisoned in it.
Right. And you were taking her through that.
So that's kind of,
yes,
that's one of the distinctions about yoga therapy is our intention is to help this person kind of find themselves. Right. She's in this particular situation with the cerebral palsy, and maybe there's somebody else over here that's got a different situation. They're working with, challenged with cancer. Mm-hmm. I'm working with a couple of students, practitioners right now, who are challenged with 2 different kinds of cancer, specifically under treatment by the doctor. And my work is to help them manage the situation more effectively. How do I help them stay more emotionally balanced? How do I help them stay connected to who they really are? Because they're not the disease.
Okay, got that.
Yep.
Got that.
And
now, you just said something that just got my attention, because I was listening. And that is, you said a doctor directed them to this.
I don't know if I said the doctor directed them
but
to it, but they are under a doctor's care.
But my point is that are the Western doctors
there's some
picking up on the yoga therapy as part of the process?
There are some.
Okay, not a lot, but some.
There are some.
It, right?
There are some, and we have a lot of work to do to get the word out about what yoga therapy is. One of the comments that I've heard is that they have heard now that there's injury coming from yoga, and that injury is coming from group yoga classes where there's a lot of students in a room. And so they're hesitant to recommend yoga. They need to know that somebody like me is available for one-on-one work specific for the person that will keep them safe and actually help them manage the situation, help them reduce stress, help them optimize their living situation.
Right. So the people that are, let's go back to regular yoga for a minute. So people that are starting yoga need to pay attention. They can't go in and do like the person that's been doing it 2 years next to them. It takes time to become flexible. So you're saying that they get injured even doing those classes, and they need to work with you one-on-one. That would be the best way to start, right? You're giving me that look. I just went down a dirt road. I shouldn't have gone down.
It's hard to generalize like that.
Okay,
it's hard
so
to generalize.
I won't. I'm just, I'm probing for the information for the people listening. It may have been
if I had a preference, everyone would come through the doorway of a private experience because that's optimal. But that's not realistic because there's so many people.
It's a time element, or it's a management of our days, and so
in restaurants we have McDonald's and we have the specialty restaurants.
Yeah, I like the other ones.
I like the specialty restaurants.
That's what I'm saying. Me too.
And so yoga therapy is the specialty. It's a special approach, and it's personal.
That's cool.
It's personal.
So how do we know when it's how do we know when the yoga therapy, and Rusty's talking to us over here. How do you know when the yoga therapy's been effective? How do you know when it's really been effective?
Well, for what I'm thinking of is someone I'm working with right now.
Okay.
He absolutely listens and does exactly what I tell him to do, and he does it daily. And he stopped me in the grocery store this past week. We ran into each other. He said, "Hey, I just want to tell you, this is working. I feel great."
That's awesome. So you know when your people are telling you if they do what you tell them to do. Listen to this, everybody. If you come see Sadani, that's SadaniYoga.com, by the way. SadaniYoga.com. SADANI yoga.com. She told me to mention that like every minute, so I am.
I did not.
I know you didn't. But we are. So it's all good. All right. So if a person comes, they go through, and we're going to back up and we're going to catch everybody up here. They go through your initial inquiry where they're telling you what's going on, and you're learning from that. They start their sessions with you. If they go, you kind of direct them the path they need to go. And then if they go home and do what they're supposed to do, right, then you'll start seeing results, and you can be there to coach them along through this yoga therapy. Do you consider yourself somewhat of a coach in this arena? Is that a word, or is that just too overtossed out there?
No,
everybody's a coach today.
Right. Sometimes I feel like a coach. Mostly, I'm an educator.
Okay.
I think educator, even therapist, is for me, educator seems to fit a little bit better, because when I'm with someone one-on-one, I'm really helping them learn about themselves in a way that they've never taken time to do before, and it's profound in its results.
And what does this is not also on the crack staff list here, but I have my own question.
Why am I surprised?
Is that why you're surprised, right? Because hurdy-gurdy Berkman. And I almost lost my train of thought there for a second.
Well, use the questions on the list.
Well, that's okay. I got that too. But what? Oh, your typical client. What does your typical client look like?
Oh my gosh.
Is it just so broad because of all the different things that could be wrong with somebody, from cancer to?
Because it varies.
Okay.
It varies. I guess in terms of age, adult. I've had some young adults, like maybe in the 20s.
Okay.
But most of the people that I work with are middle age.
Yeah, of course.
And I think that's because we've lived long enough that, we've got some stuff to manage.
Yes, we do.
And we also recognize that we're not invincible.
Okay.
And we want to sustain and maintain what we've got.
Right. We understand quality of life when we get older.
We want to have the optimal quality of life as we mature, as we live to
whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. I just didn't know if there was a typical customer, or if it was just so broad that you couldn't really define that. That's kind of what I was asking. So it's anybody.
It's anybody.
Typically middle-aged, typical
for
somebody
any reason. For any reason. In yoga therapy, we use kind of the model is that we look at the physical body.
Mm-hmm.
We look at the breath, and that's associated with the energy of the body's the system, right? You might think of that as electrical.
The electrical wiring part of you.
Of us.
Okay. The energy.
And then the emotional aspect. And the psychological, what's going on in the brain, and then the spiritual. So those five elements, they are all interrelated and connected. However, most of us don't realize that, and we're operating out of one of those, and the rest of them are dysfunctional.
Gotcha.
So when I'm working with someone, I'm always aware of all of those levels of the individual, and trying to use the tools of yoga, which are for the physical body, using asana or postures, breathing techniques to manage the energy, some kind of sound. Sometimes it's vocalizing a sound that the person seems to resonate, like just like, how we, what a relief it is.
Or sigh.
Use it, or a sigh. Things like that release stress, adjust a mood or an attitude. The meditation, which is the mental aspect, is getting to know what the thought patterns are and being able to shift those and dismantle some that are dysfunctional.
Wow.
And then the spiritual is someone may have a spiritual practice. If they do, like if they have a tradition that they grew up in and they are practicing, then that can be woven into their practice, their yoga practice. Or if they don't, then there's some other, what's your sense of connection to why you live? What's your purpose?
Right.
It's like,
which would be a big deal
what's
to me.
your purpose?
Right.
Yeah, I'm thinking of someone else that I'm working with right now who lost their job because they're disabled. They have they're working their disability and they can't work anymore. And she comes to me and says, "I've lost my purpose in life. So my job is to help her embody all those aspects of her, so she doesn't identify with what she used to do, but more with who she actually is."
And so the old saying that you're not necessarily what you do.
Definitely true.
Hey, welcome back everybody to the Hurdy Burke Internet Broadcast Network. We are going into the last 15-minute segment of the show. I am sitting here with Sadani, and Sadani is, I'm going to pause this. Sadani is with Sadani Yoga. That's Sadani yoga.com. Sadani.com. And the cool thing is that you can learn all about yoga therapy on her site. There's the contact information there, correct? They can email you and find out all your phone numbers and everything if they want to contact you. Let me ask you this. How does insurance and stuff play into this? Let's say somebody does come to you and needs to go through yoga therapy. Is there any insurance involved, or does it have to be from an injury that's been tracked through the system, or how does it work?
That is a fledgling field right now. Some insurance companies, for example, Aetna, are paying if your doctor will write you a prescription for yoga therapy, much like they would if you wanted PT. You can actually ask the doctor to write a yoga therapy prescription,
awesome.
And then you can file with your own insurance company
and see what they say.
Yes,
yeah,
I've had a couple of people do that. A couple of clients do that.
And so how does and we talked about this a little bit earlier, but how is the growth going as far as the medical industry starting to become more acceptive of yoga therapy? You could probably spend hours on that, but
well, it's growing. There's a great deal of research that's been done. There's organizations now within the yoga therapy community. They're actually working specifically on research. Evidence-based is what they call it.
Right.
There are conferences yearly that are places where you can go and learn about what's being done. So that one what I'm thinking of right now is published in the Annals of Internal Medicine. It was a study done by my teacher with the American Vinyasa Institute, Gary Crusoe, with the NIH. And they took people off of the streets and people who did not know yoga at all and had non-diagnosed chronic low back pain. And they showed beyond a shadow of a doubt that this works. But this is a Vinyasa therapy approach. There are other approaches to yoga therapy, just like there are different ways of practicing yoga in general. So
within the umbrella of yoga therapy,
yes,
there could be many options
that
therapy underneath that umbrella.
There are. So you'd have to read up, kind of get an idea of what the training is by the therapist, what school of thought that they adhere to. Maybe go do an interview, talk to them on the phone or do a personal interview, talk to someone who's actually worked with this person, this individual. I have referrals, people by students that I've worked with who can talk about their personal experience and how it helped them.
Yeah, awesome. And so how does how do you do seminars and training too of people coming up through the ranks to want to be in the yoga therapy arena?
I'm actually working with a group of yoga teachers currently.
Oh, cool. Okay, so you do.
In my own little studio, I have a group of yoga teachers that I'm mentoring, and I'm actually teaching them the back care program that was based on the NH study. So I'm teaching them how to go.
So they will eventually be able to do this, what you're doing. That
particular program.
Now, do you actually offer a certification for them? Can you? Are you certified to certify?
I'm not certifying in yoga therapy yet, but that is my intention.
That's what you're going through too. So it's an ongoing thing.
Yes.
Wow. So how much time do you, on your average day in the yoga therapy world, how much do you see people on a hourly basis, 2-hour basis? Do you limit it to 2 a day? What is your normal schedule that you go through?
Oh, wow, that's so variable. Varies a lot.
So it could be a day off. It could be a day on of intensity. It just depends, right?
Mostly days on.
Right. Well, that's what I understand that. I'm figuring
mostly
you're
days
extremely
on.
busy.
Mostly days on. And the thing is that this work, I'm passionate about it.
Right.
I love being with the people one-on-one. It nourishes me as much as it nourishes the people
awesome.
I'm with. So it's a win-win for both of us.
Wow. That's cool.
Yes. The other part that we didn't talk about that's a little aside is that I do teach or train yoga teachers at the entry level. Every summer I do an intensive. So many of the students that I'm mentoring right now in this back care program that I run at my studio at Sadani Yoga come out of the trainings that I have led them in. So we already have a relationship, and we just go deeper.
And so there you go. So how good is that?
I love it.
Well, guess what? We're bumping into the top of the hour.
I can't
already.
believe it.
And so
guess I'll have to come back.
you will. And I wanted to say thank you
you're
for
so
being
welcome.
on the network, and thank you for bringing your knowledge and everything to the table, because I know that a lot of people that are listening to this and people listening to the archive are going to be checking this out, because I'm telling you, till tonight or yesterday or till when she invited you on the show, I had no idea what yoga therapy does. I thought that it was yoga and you just did a little therapy with it. I mean, that just shows you how much we don't know and in the world. And I want to thank you for enlightening me. And you know, I'm getting more and more people on the show that are talking about well-being, everything from you know, Chinese medicine to yoga to, I'm seeing a real inroad, at least in my world, I'm seeing little inroads into alternative healing, ways to let the body take care of itself. Did I hit on something there?
Well, you did. The word that's in my mind is complementary.
Yep.
They're all complementary.
They all work together.
They all work together, and it's not symptom-based, it's health-oriented. Right, so we don't have to get sick or feel bad to do these things.
Yeah, we're not trying to cover up a symptom. We're trying to make our well-being overall.
We're getting down to the roots and growing and becoming healthy.
Awesome.
And balance is the key word, balance on all those levels. One other thing, there's a friend of mine, she's a yoga therapist down in Oak Hill that also is practicing. She has similar training that I do. Her name is Marilyn Lindgren. She's got Oak Hill Yoga.
Well,
so if you're down in that area,
if you're way down,
check out Marilyn.
No fires, right, this year?
No
Y'all
fires.
Been okay this year? Okay, that's a good thing. Listen, thank you for being here. Go ahead.
One other thing, I'm located just a couple of blocks north of Ben White off of Manchac, so I'm centrally located.
Right, and if they go to your website, sadaniyoga.com,
they'll see that.
There's your contact information, your phone number. There's information on directions and how to get there and everything, and it even goes into about you and some other stuff we didn't even get to in this 1 hour tonight.
There's so much.
Told you to go fast, didn't I?
Oh, it's so much fun.
Well, guess what? This has been the Hurdy Burke Internet Broadcast Network. We want to thank Sadani for being here. We're going to finish out the song Little Stevie. You guys come back and see us around the corner next week. This is the Hurdy Burke Internet Broadcast Network. And we will be back around the corner, and we're going to get into what this yoga therapy is, and my crack staff is going to get my questions so I don't feel naked over here on the air, and we'll be right back.